The dust kicked up under Vincent Dawson's boots as he walked the fence line of his ranch in Llano, Texas, on that scorching afternoon in June of 1882. And he never expected to find anyone perched on the old oak stump near his creek, much less a woman with copper hair gleaming in the sunlight as she sketched his land with careful, deliberate strokes. Vincent stopped dead in his tracks, his hand instinctively moving toward the revolver at his hip before he recognized the peaceful nature of the intrusion. The woman sat with her back partially turned to him, a wide-brimmed hat shading her face, her traveling dress dusty from the Texas roads. An easel stood before her, and she worked with such concentration that she had not yet noticed his approach. He cleared his throat, not wanting to startle her too badly. "Madam, you are on private property." The woman jumped anyway, her charcoal pencil skittering across the paper in a dark slash. She turned quickly, her green eyes wide with alarm, one hand pressed to her chest. "Oh my goodness, you frightened me half to death. Did not mean to, but this is my land." Vincent kept his voice measured, taking in her appearance more fully now. She was young, perhaps 24 or 25, with freckles dusting her nose and cheeks. Her face held an intelligent, refined look that spoke of education and city living. Most folks ask permission before setting up shop on someone else's ranch. The woman stood, brushing dust from her skirts with quick, nervous movements. "I apologize sincerely. I arrived in Llano just yesterday, and the owner of the general store said the countryside around here was beautiful for sketching. He pointed me in this direction, but I suppose I wandered farther than I should have." Vincent stepped closer, his curiosity getting the better of his irritation. "What are you drawing?" She hesitated, then gestured to her easel. "Your ranch, apparently." "I hope you do not mind that I have already finished most of it." He moved to where he could see the sketch properly, and what he saw made his breath catch. The woman had not simply drawn his ranch buildings and the landscape. She had captured something more, something he had never quite been able to put into words. The loneliness of the place, yes, but also its stark beauty, and the way the light fell across the hills in the late afternoon. In the foreground, she had sketched the old oak tree where his mother had been buried 5 years ago, and somehow she had made it look both sorrowful and peaceful. "This is remarkable," he said quietly. "You have real talent." A flush of pleasure crossed her face. "Thank you. I have always seen things a bit differently than most people. Not just what is there, but what feels like it is there, if that makes any sense." "It does." Vincent looked from the sketch back to her. "I am Vincent Dawson. I own this ranch and about 2,000 acres surrounding it." "Abigail Chambers," she replied, offering her hand in a forthright manner that surprised him. Her grip was firm when he shook it, her fingers stained with charcoal and ink. "I truly am sorry for trespassing. I can pack up immediately if you would like." Vincent found himself not wanting her to leave. He had been alone on this ranch for nearly 3 years now, ever since his mother died, and his younger brother headed to California seeking his fortune. The cowhands who worked for him came and went, but none of them stayed in the main house, and none of them talked about anything more substantial than cattle prices and the weather. "You can finish," he heard himself say, "but perhaps you would accept some water. It is a hot day to be sitting in the sun." Abigail's face brightened. "That would be wonderful, thank you." Vincent walked back to the ranch house, a sturdy structure his father had built 20 years earlier. Inside, he poured cool water from the pitcher in the kitchen, adding a few drops of lemon juice the way his mother used to. When he returned to Abigail, she was seated again, adding delicate shading to the sketch. "Here." He handed her the tin cup. She drank gratefully, then set the cup aside. "You have a beautiful ranch, Mr. Dawson. How long have you lived here?" "All my life. My father claimed this land in '62, built the house and the barns. He died in '65, got thrown from a horse. My mother kept the place running until she passed 5 years ago." Vincent did not usually share so much with strangers, but something about Abigail made the words come easily. "I am sorry for your losses." Her sympathy sounded genuine. "It must be difficult, managing all of this alone. I have hired hands, but yes, it gets lonely sometimes." He paused, then asked, "What brings you to Llano? We do not get many artists passing through." Abigail's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "I needed a change from my life in St. Louis. My father passed away 6 months ago, and my aunt thought I should come stay with her for a while. She lives here in Llano with her husband. They run the boarding house on Main Street." "The Carters?" "Yes, that is right. Helen Carter is my mother's sister." Vincent nodded. He knew the Carters, decent people who kept a clean establishment. "So you will be staying in Llano for some time?" "I am not certain yet. I have been feeling rather unmoored since my father died. He was a professor of literature at Washington University, and we were very close. My mother died when I was young, so it was just the two of us for many years." Abigail returned her attention to the sketch, adding a few more careful lines. "Art has always been my solace. When I draw or paint, I feel like I am making sense of the world somehow." Vincent understood that feeling, though his solace came from working the land, from the physical labor that left him too tired to think about his loneliness at night. He watched Abigail work for a while, fascinated by the way her hand moved across the paper, confident and sure. "Would you like to see the rest of the ranch?" he found himself asking. "I could saddle a gentle horse for you if you ride." Abigail looked up, surprise and pleasure mingling in her expression. "I would like that very much, though I should warn you that my riding skills are rather rusty. I have not been on a horse since I was a girl. I will make sure you get a calm one." They walked together to the barn, and Vincent saddled his most docile mare, a bay named Clementine who had been his mother's favorite. For himself, he saddled his black gelding, Shadow. Abigail needed help mounting, and Vincent tried not to notice the way his hands spanned her waist as he lifted her into the saddle, or the quick flush that colored her cheeks at the contact. They rode slowly across the ranch, Vincent pointing out various landmarks and telling her stories about the land. He showed her where the spring ran clearest, where the wild mustangs sometimes came to drink, where his father had fought off a small band of Comanche raiders back in the early days. Abigail listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions, and occasionally stopping to examine some particularly striking view. "This land has so much character," she said as they paused on a rise overlooking the ranch buildings. "I can see why you love it." "It is all I have ever known," Vincent admitted. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to see other places, cities and mountains and the ocean, but I cannot imagine leaving here permanently." "There is something to be said for having roots," Abigail replied. "I have always felt a bit like a dandelion seed, floating from one place to another without ever quite landing." "Is that why you came to Texas?" She nodded slowly. "After my father died, the house in St. Louis felt like a mausoleum. His colleagues from the university were kind, but they all had their own families and lives. I realized I had spent so much time as my father's daughter that I had never figured out who I was on my own. My aunt's invitation seemed like an opportunity to start fresh, even if Texas was not exactly where I imagined myself ending up." Vincent could hear the loneliness in her voice, a loneliness that echoed his own. "Well, Llano may be small, but it has good people. You might find it suits you." They rode back to the ranch as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Abigail had grown more comfortable in the saddle, and she smiled as Clementine picked her way carefully down the slope. "Thank you for showing me around," she said as Vincent helped her dismount. "This has been one of the loveliest afternoons I have had in a very long time." "You are welcome to come back and sketch whenever you like," Vincent said, surprising himself with the offer. "As long as you are staying in Llano, I mean. The ranch is always here." Abigail's smile was radiant. "I would like that immensely. Perhaps I could paint a proper version of today's sketch. I could give it to you as an apology for trespassing." "You do not need to apologize anymore, but I would treasure a painting of the ranch." Vincent walked with her back to where she had left her supplies. "Do you need help carrying everything back to town?" "I have my aunt's small cart just up the road. I should be fine, but thank you." Abigail packed her supplies carefully, wrapping the sketch in cloth to protect it. "Good evening, Mr. Dawson. Thank you again for your kindness." "Vincent," he said. "Please just call me Vincent, then you must call me Abigail." She offered him that warm smile again, then made her way up the path toward the road. Vincent stood watching until she disappeared from view, feeling something shift inside him, like a door opening in a long, locked room. The next few days passed in their usual routine, but Vincent found his thoughts returning again and again to Abigail and her sketches. He wondered if she would actually come back, or if their encounter had been a singular moment. On the fourth day, as he was mending a section of fence near the creek, he heard the sound of a cart approaching and looked up to see Abigail guiding a small two-wheeled vehicle down the path. She waved when she saw him, and he set down his tools, walking over to meet her. Today she wore a different dress, pale yellow with white trim, and she had tied her hair back with a ribbon. "Good morning," she called out. "I hope you meant your invitation." "Of course I did." Vincent helped her down from the cart. "Have you come to paint?" "Yes, if that is still agreeable." "I brought my watercolors and a larger canvas." She gestured to the supplies loaded in the back of the cart. "I thought I might try to capture the ranch at a different time of day. The morning light is so different from the afternoon." Vincent helped her carry her materials to a spot she selected, closer to the ranch house this time. She set up her easel with practiced efficiency, mixing paints and preparing her canvas while he watched with fascination. "You mind if I work nearby?" he asked. "I have some repairs to make on the porch railing." "Not at all. I like having company, even if we are both focused on our own tasks." They fell into a comfortable rhythm, Abigail painting while Vincent worked on the railing. Occasionally, she would make a comment about the way the light fell, or ask him a question about some detail of the buildings. He found himself telling her more stories, about his childhood on the ranch, about his brother Thomas, who had left for California, about the challenges of running a cattle operation in the unpredictable Texas climate. "You ever hear from Thomas?" Abigail asked as she added delicate strokes to what would become the barn. "Sometimes. He writes every few months. Last I heard, he was working in a silver mine near Virginia City. He always talks about striking it rich, but I think mostly he just wanted an adventure." Vincent hammered in a nail, testing the sturdiness of the repaired section. "We were never as close as brothers should be. He found ranch life boring, wanted more excitement." "And you never wanted excitement?" Vincent considered the question. "I suppose I did when I was younger. But the older I got, the more I appreciated what we had here. My father built something lasting, something real. That seemed more valuable than chasing after silver or gold." Abigail nodded thoughtfully. "My father used to say that true wealth was in knowledge and relationships, not material things." Of course, he had a comfortable university salary, so it was easy for him to be philosophical about money. Her voice held a note of gentle humor. "But I think he was right in essence. The happiest times of my life were not when we had the most, but when we were closest as a family." They worked in companionable silence for a while, and then Abigail said, "Vincent, would you mind standing near the barn for a moment? I want to get the proportions right, and having a person in the frame would help." He obliged, feeling self-conscious as she studied him with an artist's analytical eye. She made quick sketches on a separate piece of paper, capturing his stance and the way he held his hat in his hand. "You have an interesting face," she said absently, focused on her work. "Very expressive, even when you think you are not showing emotion." "What do you mean?" Abigail looked up, a slight flush coloring her cheeks as if she had not meant to speak aloud. "Just that your feelings show in subtle ways. The way you look at your ranch, for instance. There is such pride and affection in your expression. And when you talk about your mother, there is sadness but also warmth. You are not as isolated as you think you are, not emotionally. You just need someone to see you." Her words struck him deeply, cutting through defenses he had not realized he had built. "I suppose I have gotten used to keeping things to myself. Loneliness has a way of doing that to people." Abigail returned to her painting, adding color to the sky. "We forget how to reach out, even when we desperately want connection." Vincent walked back over to the porch, but his mind was no longer on repairs. He watched Abigail work, noting the concentration on her face, the slight furrow between her brows when she was deciding on a color, the way she stepped back periodically to assess her progress. She was beautiful, he realized, not in a conventional way perhaps, but in a way that drew him in more powerfully than mere prettiness ever could. When the sun reached its zenith, Vincent went inside and prepared lunch, cold chicken and bread with fresh tomatoes from his small garden. He brought it out on a tray with 2 glasses of lemonade. "You did not have to do that," Abigail protested, but she set down her brush gratefully. "You have been working for hours. You must be hungry." They sat together on the porch steps, eating and talking. Abigail told him about St. Louis, about the art exhibitions she had attended and the other artists she had met. She spoke about her dream of one day having her work shown in a real gallery, though she admitted it was unlikely for a woman artist to be taken seriously. "That seems unfair," Vincent said. "Your work is as good as any I have seen, and I have been to exhibitions in San Antonio. Fairness has little to do with it, I am afraid. The art world, like most worlds, is dominated by men who believe women should be painting flowers and children, not landscapes and serious subjects." She sighed. "But I paint anyway because I must. It is not something I can stop doing, even if no one ever sees my work beyond friends and family." "I see your work," Vincent said quietly, "and I think it is extraordinary." Abigail met his eyes and something passed between them, a recognition that went beyond words. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means more than you might think." After lunch, Abigail returned to her painting while Vincent rode out to check on his cattle in the southern pasture. He found his mind wandering constantly to the woman on his porch, to the way she looked at the world, to the sound of her laughter when he said something amusing. He had not felt this way since Sarah Mitchum back when he was 18, a feeling that had ended when Sarah married a banker's son from Austin. When he returned to the ranch in the late afternoon, Abigail was packing up her supplies. The painting was still wet, but he could see that she had made remarkable progress. She had captured the ranch with loving detail, and in the foreground, she had painted a figure that he recognized as himself, standing near the barn with his hat in his hand. "You included me," he said, surprised. "I hope you do not mind. It seemed right somehow to have you in the painting. This place is as much a part of you as you are a part of it." Abigail secured the painting carefully in her cart. "I will need to come back several more times to finish it properly." "You are welcome any time," Vincent said, and meant it with his whole heart. Over the following weeks, Abigail became a regular presence at the ranch. She came every few days, sometimes to work on the painting, sometimes just to sketch different aspects of the property. Vincent found himself planning his work so that he would be near wherever she was painting. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing stories and dreams and fears. He learned that she had been engaged once to a young lawyer in St. Louis, but had broken it off when she realized he expected her to give up her art after marriage. She learned that he had almost sold the ranch after his mother died, overwhelmed by loneliness and responsibility, but had ultimately decided he could not let go of his family's legacy. The more time they spent together, the more Vincent felt himself falling for her. It was there in the way his heart lifted when he saw her cart coming down the road, in the way he found himself thinking about her last words before she left, in the way he dreamed about her at night. One evening in late July, as Abigail was preparing to leave, dark clouds rolled in from the west with alarming speed. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the wind picked up, sending dust devils spiraling across the yard. "You should not drive back in this," Vincent said, eyeing the approaching storm. "It looks like it will be a bad one." Abigail looked at the sky with concern. "You are probably right, but I cannot stay here. It would not be proper. You can stay in the house. I will sleep in the barn. No one needs to know, and it is better than you getting caught in a flash flood on the road." Even as he spoke, the first fat raindrops began to fall. Abigail hesitated only a moment before nodding. "All right, thank you." They hurried to get her cart into the barn and unhitch the horse. By the time they ran back to the house, the rain was falling in earnest, soaking them both. Inside, Vincent lit lamps while Abigail stood dripping on the floor, laughing at their bedraggled state. "Let me get you a towel," he said, and fetched one from the linen cupboard along with one of his mother's old dresses that he had kept. "You can change into this. It will be too short, but at least it is dry." Abigail took the items gratefully and disappeared into his mother's old room. Vincent changed in his own room, then went to the kitchen to make coffee and see what he could prepare for dinner. He found eggs and bacon, potatoes and onions, and set about making a simple meal. When Abigail emerged, her hair was down around her shoulders, drying in soft waves. The dress was indeed too short, showing her ankles, and the sight of her in his mother's clothing did something to Vincent's heart that he could not quite name. "Something smells wonderful," she said, coming into the kitchen. "Just a simple supper. I am not much of a cook, but I can manage the basics." They ate at the small kitchen table, the storm raging outside. Lightning flashed through the windows and the rain drummed steadily on the roof. It felt strangely domestic, the two of them sharing a meal in the warm lamplight while the storm surrounded them. "This house has good bones," Abigail said, looking around the kitchen. "Your father built it well. He built everything to last. That was his way." Vincent poured them both more coffee. "Sometimes I wish he had lived longer so I could have learned more from him. I was only 12 when he died, barely old enough to understand what it meant to lose him. At least you have your memories of him. I barely remember my mother at all. She died when I was 4 from influenza. My father never remarried, said he could never love anyone the way he loved her." Abigail traced the rim of her coffee cup with one finger. "I used to think that was romantic, but as I got older, I wondered if it was also a bit sad. He was so young when she died, only 30. He had 40 more years alone. Maybe he was not as alone as you think. He had you. That is kind of you to say." She smiled at him. "You know, when I first came to Llano, I thought I would stay only a month or two, just long enough to figure out what to do next. But now I find myself not wanting to leave. This place has gotten under my skin somehow." Vincent's heart beat faster. "Is it the place, or is it something else?" Abigail met his eyes, and the air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken feelings. "I think you know it is not just the place." He stood and came around the table, offering her his hand. She took it, standing to face him. They were close now, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her green eyes, close enough to smell the faint scent of her lavender soap. "Abigail, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice rough. "These past weeks with you have been the happiest I have known in years, maybe ever. I wake up every morning hoping today will be one of the days you come to the ranch. When you are here, everything feels right in a way it has not since before my mother died. I think I am falling in love with you, and I know that might be too much too soon, but I cannot keep it to myself anymore." Abigail's eyes shimmered with tears. "It is not too much," she whispered. "I feel the same way. I have been trying to tell myself it is too fast, that we have only known each other a few weeks, but my heart does not seem to care about logic or propriety. I love you, Vincent. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you see the beauty in this harsh land. I love the life you have built here and the man you have become despite your losses." Vincent cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "May I kiss you?" "Please," she breathed. He kissed her gently at first, a soft press of lips that sent electricity through his entire body. Abigail made a small sound and wound her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more passionate. Vincent felt like he was drowning and being saved at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is sudden, but I am sure. I want you here with me always, not just as a visitor but as my wife, as the mistress of this ranch, as my partner in everything." Abigail laughed, the sound joyful and slightly disbelieving. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Vincent Dawson. I cannot think of anything I want more." They kissed again and then again, until they were both dizzy with happiness. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside, everything was warm and perfect and right. They spent the evening talking about the future, making plans. Abigail would speak to her aunt and uncle, and Vincent would arrange for them to be married by the circuit preacher who came through Llano once a month. They would have a simple ceremony, just family and a few friends, and then Abigail would move into the ranch house. "I can turn my mother's room into a studio for you," Vincent said. "It has the best light in the house. You can paint whenever you want." "You would do that for me?" Abigail's voice was full of wonder. "I would do anything for you. Your art is part of who you are. I would never want you to give it up." She kissed him again, soft and sweet. "I cannot believe I found you. When I drove out here that first day, I was just looking for a pretty view to sketch. I never imagined I would find everything I had been searching for." "I never imagined you either," Vincent admitted. "I had resigned myself to being alone, thought maybe that was just my fate, and then you appeared and suddenly everything changed." When it came time to sleep, Vincent insisted on making his bed in the barn as promised, despite Abigail's protests that it was silly now that they were engaged. "We will do this properly," he said. "I want to give you all the respect you deserve." He kissed her goodnight at the door, a long, lingering kiss that left them both wanting more. Then he grabbed a blanket and headed out to the barn, which had finally stopped raining. The night was cool and fresh, washed clean by the storm, and Vincent lay in the hay looking up at the barn roof, thinking about Abigail asleep in his house, about the fact that soon she would be his wife. In the morning, they drove back to town together, Abigail's cart tied behind Vincent's horse. At the boarding house, Aunt Helen took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. "Something has happened," she said. "Aunt Helen, Vincent and I are engaged to be married," Abigail announced, her face glowing with happiness. Helen embraced her niece warmly, then shook Vincent's hand. "I am delighted for you both. I could tell something was developing between you. Abigail has talked of nothing but your ranch and your kindness since the day she met you." "I hope you approve, madam," Vincent said. "I promise to take good care of her. I believe you will." Helen looked at Abigail fondly. "Your father would have liked him, dear. He always said you needed someone steady and true." The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Abigail worked on finishing the painting of the ranch, which she declared would be her wedding gift to Vincent. She also began making plans for the house, for how she would arrange her studio and what changes she might make to the kitchen. Vincent threw himself into improving the ranch, repairing anything that needed fixing and making sure everything was perfect for his bride. He bought new curtains for the windows and a beautiful quilt for their bed, items his mother would have chosen if she had lived to see him marry. They saw each other every day, sometimes at the ranch, sometimes in town. Word of their engagement spread quickly through Llano, and most people seemed genuinely happy for them. A few raised eyebrows at the speed of the courtship, but Vincent did not care. He knew what he felt, and he knew it was real. The circuit preacher arrived in Llano on the 15th of August, and Vincent and Abigail were married in a simple ceremony at the town's small church. Abigail wore a dress of cream-colored lace that her aunt had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers from the ranch. Vincent wore his best suit, feeling both nervous and happier than he had ever been. As they exchanged vows, Vincent looked into Abigail's eyes and saw his future reflected there, a future full of love and partnership and joy. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Vincent kissed his bride, he felt like the luckiest man in all of Texas. The small reception was held at the boarding house, with food and music and dancing. Vincent's ranch hands attended, along with most of the town's residents. Everyone congratulated the couple and wished them well. Even old Samuel Green, the most cantankerous man in Llano, admitted that they made a fine pair. As the sun began to set, Vincent and Abigail left the reception and rode back to the ranch together. Abigail rode beside him on Clementine, her wedding dress carefully folded in a bag. She had changed into a riding dress, more practical for the journey home. Vincent loved the sound of that. Abigail was coming home with him, not as a visitor but as his wife, to share his life and his land. At the ranch, he lifted her down from the horse and carried her across the threshold, both of them laughing. Inside, the house felt different already, warmer and more alive with Abigail there. They lit lamps throughout the rooms, chasing away the shadows. "Welcome home, Mrs. Dawson," Vincent said, pulling her close. "Mrs. Dawson," Abigail repeated as if testing the name. "I like the sound of that." Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a discovery of each other that left them both breathless and amazed. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Vincent's bed, their bed now, talking and touching and marveling at the fact that they belonged to each other. "I used to think I would never find this," Abigail confessed, her head resting on Vincent's chest. "Real love, the kind that makes you feel complete. I thought maybe I was too odd, too focused on my art, too independent. But you love all those things about me." "I love everything about you," Vincent said simply. "You make me whole in ways I did not even realize I was broken." The weeks turned into months, and Abigail settled into life on the ranch as if she had always been there. She set up her studio in the former bedroom, arranging her paints and canvases and easels with joy. She painted constantly, capturing the changing seasons on the ranch, the daily rhythms of ranch life, and portraits of Vincent that made him see himself through her loving eyes. But she also became a true partner in running the ranch. She had a good head for numbers and took over managing the books and finances. She learned to ride better and often accompanied Vincent when he checked on the herds. She made friends with the ranch hands, who quickly came to respect and like her. Vicent Hernandez, Vincent's foreman, told him privately that Abigail was the best thing that had ever happened to the ranch. "She has brought light here, patron," he said in his accented English. "The place feels alive again." Vincent could not argue with that. Everything was better with Abigail beside him. The work felt less burdensome, the challenges less daunting. When they sat together on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the Texas hills, he felt a contentment he had never known was possible. In October, Abigail discovered she was expecting a child. She told Vincent one morning over breakfast, her face anxious and hopeful at once. "I know we have only been married a few months, but I think I am with child." Vincent's reaction was immediate and joyful. He swept her up into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests to be careful. "This is wonderful news," he said. "The most wonderful news. You are not worried it is too soon? Not at all. I want a family with you, Abigail, as many children as God sees fit to give us." He set her down gently and placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our child. I can hardly believe it." As winter approached, they prepared for the baby's arrival. Vincent built a cradle from oak wood, sanding and polishing it until it was smooth and perfect. Abigail sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her face soft with maternal anticipation. They turned the small room next to their bedroom into a nursery, painting it a cheerful yellow and adding curtains with blue trim. Abigail's pregnancy progressed smoothly. She continued to paint, though she tired more easily as the months went by. Vincent became protective, insisting she not overdo anything, but Abigail gently reminded him that women had been having babies since the beginning of time, and she was healthy and strong. In February of 1883, during a cold snap that was unusual for Llano, Abigail went into labor. Vincent sent one of the hands racing into town to fetch the midwife, Mrs. O'Brien, a competent woman who had delivered half the babies in the county. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Vincent paced the house, helpless and terrified, listening to Abigail's cries from the bedroom. Aunt Helen had come to help, and she periodically emerged to assure Vincent that everything was progressing normally, but he could not shake his fear. Finally, just after dawn, he heard a new sound, the lusty cry of a newborn baby. Moments later, Aunt Helen emerged with a smile. "You have a son, Vincent. A big, healthy boy." Vincent rushed into the bedroom where Abigail lay exhausted but radiant, cradling a small bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. She looked up at him with tired, happy eyes. "Come meet your son." He approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny red face of his child. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was waving one small fist in the air. "He is perfect," Vincent whispered. "He is," Abigail agreed. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names over the winter but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Vincent thought of his father. "James," he said. "After my father, James Thomas for both our fathers." Abigail smiled. "James Thomas Dawson, I like that very much." Vincent sat carefully on the edge of the bed and put his arm around his wife, looking down at their son. A family. He had a family again, but this time he had built it himself, with the woman he loved more than anything in the world. The months after James's birth were exhausting but joyful. The baby was healthy and grew quickly, and Abigail proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving. Vincent was amazed by her ability to balance caring for the baby, maintaining her art and helping with the ranch. She did it all with grace and humor, even on the difficult days when James fussed or the ranch work piled up. Vincent's brother Thomas surprised them with a visit in late spring. He had heard about the marriage and the baby through letters and had come to meet his new family. Thomas was brown by the sun and thinner than Vincent remembered, but he seemed happy and full of stories about his adventures in the silver mines. "I cannot believe my big brother is a family man," Thomas said, holding James carefully. "You always seemed so serious and solitary. But I can see this life suits you." "It does," Vincent confirmed, "more than I ever imagined it could." Thomas stayed for a week, charming Abigail with his wit and helping with ranch work. Before he left, he pulled Vincent aside. "I am glad you found her," he said seriously. "You deserve happiness, Vincent. You have worked hard all your life, keeping the ranch going, honoring what our parents built. I am sorry I left you alone with all that responsibility." "You had to find your own path," Vincent replied. "I understand that now." "Maybe," Thomas said. "But I think I have done enough wandering. I am thinking about coming back to Texas, settling down somewhere. Not here on the ranch, this is your place, but maybe in San Antonio or Houston. Start a business, find a good woman like you did." He grinned. "Though I doubt I will find anyone quite as remarkable as Abigail." After Thomas left, life returned to its pleasant rhythm. James grew and began to smile, then laugh, delighting his parents with every new development. Abigail returned to painting with renewed inspiration, creating a series of works that documented their family's first year together. One day in early summer, a stranger rode up to the ranch, a well-dressed man in a suit who introduced himself as Arthur Pemberton from the Houston Art Society. "I am here because I saw one of your wife's paintings at the general store in town," he explained to Vincent. "Mr. Garrett had it hanging behind his counter, said it was painted by a local artist. I would very much like to speak with Mrs. Dawson about her work." Vincent fetched Abigail, who came from the studio with James on her hip and paint on her fingers. Mr. Pemberton was effusive in his praise of her talent and explained that the Houston Art Society was organizing an exhibition featuring Texas artists. He wanted to include several of Abigail's paintings. "I appreciate the offer," Abigail said carefully, "but I am a wife and mother now. I do not know that I have time for exhibitions." "Please at least consider it," Pemberton urged. "Your work deserves to be seen. Texas needs artists who can capture the true character of this land, and you have a rare gift for it." After he left, Abigail sat on the porch with James while Vincent finished his work. When he joined them, she was staring out at the hills with a thoughtful expression. "You should do it," Vincent said. She looked at him in surprise. "I was not certain you would approve." "Why would I not approve? Your art is important, Abigail. I have always known that. If people want to see it and appreciate it, that is wonderful. You can paint here and send the paintings to Houston. It does not have to interfere with our life." Abigail's eyes filled with tears. "I love you so much. Do you know that?" "I do," he said, kissing her. "And I love you. Now, which paintings do you think you should send?" Abigail ended up selecting 5 paintings for the exhibition, including the one of the ranch that had first brought her and Vincent together. The exhibition took place in September, and though they could not attend in person, Mr. Pemberton sent glowing reports. 3 of Abigail's paintings sold for significant sums, and several art critics wrote favorable reviews in the Houston newspapers. "You are becoming famous," Vincent teased her when she read him the reviews. "Hardly famous," Abigail laughed. "But it is gratifying to know that people connect with my work." More opportunities followed. The San Antonio Museum of Art requested pieces for their permanent collection. A gallery in New Orleans wanted to represent her work. Abigail carefully selected which opportunities to pursue, always making sure they fit with her priorities, her family and her life on the ranch. The years passed in a steady stream of happiness. James grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He followed Vincent everywhere, learning about cattle and horses and the land. Abigail captured his childhood in paintings and sketches, a visual record of their family's life. In 1885, Abigail gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Ruth, after Vincent's mother. Sarah was quieter than James had been as a baby, with Abigail's green eyes and copper hair. James was enchanted with his little sister and appointed himself her protector. 2 years later, another son arrived, whom they named Michael Henry. Michael was a happy, placid baby who rarely cried and seemed content just to observe the world around him. Vincent could hardly believe his good fortune. He had gone from lonely bachelor to husband and father of 3, surrounded by love and laughter. The ranch prospered under their joint management, and their family became known throughout the county for their hospitality and kindness. Abigail's art career continued to grow, though she was selective about exhibitions and commissions. She wanted to be present for her children's childhoods, not traveling constantly or locked away in her studio. But she produced a steady stream of work, and her reputation as one of Texas's premier artists became firmly established. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Abigail back to the spot where he had first found her sketching. They left the children with Aunt Helen for the afternoon and rode out together, just the 2 of them. "You remember that day?" Vincent asked as they stood under the old oak tree. "Of course I do. I was so embarrassed about trespassing, and you were trying so hard to be stern, but I could tell you were more curious than angry." Abigail leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her. "I felt something even then, though I did not recognize it at the time. Like my whole life had been leading me to that moment, to that place, to you. I know what you mean. I looked at your sketch and saw that you had captured something about this ranch, about me, that I had never been able to articulate. You saw straight through to the heart of things." Vincent turned her in his arms so he could see her face. "You have given me everything, Abigail. A family, a purpose beyond just maintaining the ranch, joy in every single day. I love you more now than I did when we married, and I did not think that was possible." "I love you too," Abigail said softly. "Thank you for seeing me, Vincent. Not just the artist or the woman, but the whole person. Thank you for making space in your life for all of me." They kissed there under the oak tree where Vincent's mother was buried, surrounded by the land they both loved. In the distance, they could see the ranch buildings, solid and enduring. Above them, the Texas sky stretched vast and blue. The future lay ahead of them, full of promise and possibility, but in that moment, all that mattered was the present, the 2 of them together. Life continued its steady rhythm through the years. The children grew and thrived. James developed a keen interest in ranching and began taking on more responsibilities as he entered his teenage years. Sarah showed an artistic talent like her mother and spent hours in the studio learning to paint. Michael had a way with animals and could calm the most skittish horse with his gentle touch. Vincent's hair began to show silver at the temples, and Abigail found her first gray hair on her 30th birthday, which she regarded with wry amusement. "We are getting older," she said. "But we are getting older together," Vincent replied. "That is all that matters." In 1890, Thomas returned to Texas permanently, having made a modest fortune in the silver mines. He bought a ranch about 50 miles from Vincent's place and married a schoolteacher named Margaret. The brothers grew closer in those years, visiting each other regularly and working together on various ranching concerns. Aunt Helen and her husband retired from running the boarding house and moved into a small cottage on Vincent and Abigail's ranch. Helen helped with the children and the household, and her presence added another layer of family warmth to their lives. Abigail's paintings continued to sell well, and she had become a celebrated artist not just in Texas but throughout the Southwest. Yet she never let success change her. She remained devoted to her family and her ranch, painting because she loved it, not for fame or fortune. One evening in the spring of 1893, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Vincent reflected on the past 11 years. James was now 10, a capable young man who reminded Vincent more of his father every day. Sarah was 8, already showing signs of becoming a fine artist. Michael was 6, gentle and kind with a ready smile for everyone. "You ever regret it?" Vincent asked Abigail suddenly. "Giving up city life, giving up the possibility of being a full-time artist to live out here in the middle of nowhere." Abigail looked at him with surprise. "Regret it? Vincent, this life is better than anything I could have imagined for myself. When I came to Llano all those years ago, I was lost and alone. I thought I would paint some landscapes, figure out what to do next, and probably end up back in St. Louis living a half-life. Instead, I found you. I found home. I found purpose and love and a family. My art is better because of this life, not in spite of it. How could I possibly regret that?" "I just want to make sure you are happy," Vincent said. "I am more than happy. I am fulfilled." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Every morning I wake up next to the man I love. I spend my days painting the land I love, raising children I adore, building a life that matters. What more could anyone want?" Vincent kissed her hand. "You are right. I am a fortunate man." "We are both fortunate," Abigail corrected. "We found each other against all odds. That kind of luck is rare." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, their children came running from the barn where they had been playing. James was carrying Michael on his shoulders, and Sarah was laughing at something one of her brothers had said. They climbed onto the porch, settling around their parents with the easy affection of a close-knit family. "Tell us a story," Sarah begged. "Tell us about how you met." Vincent and Abigail exchanged smiles. They had told this story many times, but their children never tired of hearing it. "Well," Vincent began, "it was a hot day in June, and I was walking the fence line when I saw someone sitting under the oak tree by the creek. And I was sketching his ranch," Abigail continued, "even though I was trespassing terribly." "Mama was trespassing?" Michael asked with wide eyes. "I was indeed, but your father was kind enough to forgive me, and he even brought me water." "And then Papa fell in love with you," Sarah said confidently. "Not right away," Vincent said. "First, I just thought she was interesting and talented. But yes, very quickly I fell in love with your mother. Because she saw things other people could not see," James added. He had heard this part many times. "That is right," Abigail confirmed. "I saw the beauty in this ranch and in your father. And he saw the real me, not just the proper lady I was supposed to be, but the artist and dreamer I truly was." The children listened raptly, even though they knew the story by heart. It was a family ritual, this retelling of how their parents met, a reminder of the love that had created their family. Later, after the children were in bed, Vincent and Abigail stood in the doorway of each room, looking at their sleeping children. Sarah was curled up with her favorite doll, her red hair spread across the pillow. Michael slept on his stomach, arms flung wide. James, in his own small bedroom, was sprawled across his bed, already nearly as tall as his mother. "We made them," Abigail whispered in wonder. "These 3 beautiful people." "We did," Vincent agreed. "And they are going to do amazing things with their lives." As they returned to their own bedroom, Abigail paused to look out the window at the moonlit ranch. Vincent came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I am thinking about that painting I did all those years ago, the one of the ranch with you standing by the barn. I titled it Home, but I did not really understand what that meant then. I do now. Home is not just a place. It is the people you love, the life you build together, the memories you create. That is beautiful, Vincent said. You should write that down. Abigail turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. I do not need to write it down. I live it every day. That is better than any words or paintings could ever be. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity and the passion that had never dimmed between them. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, they talked about the future, about expanding the ranch, about James's education, about Sarah's artistic training, about Michael's future. Whatever they choose to do, I just want them to be happy, Abigail said. The way we are happy. They will be, Vincent assured her, because they have had the example of their parents who love each other and built a good life together. That is the best gift we can give them. The years continued to unfold in a pattern of seasons and celebrations. Birthdays and holidays, cattle drives and art exhibitions, family dinners and quiet evenings on the porch. The ranch prospered, and so did their family. In 1895, Vincent and Abigail celebrated their 13th wedding anniversary by taking a trip to San Antonio, their first time away from the ranch and children for more than a day. Aunt Helen stayed with the children, and Vincent and Abigail spent a week rediscovering each other and exploring the city. They visited art galleries and museums, attended a concert, and dined in fine restaurants. But their favorite moments were the quiet ones, walking through the streets hand in hand, sitting in their hotel room talking until late at night, making love without worrying about children overhearing. "This is wonderful," Abigail said as they sat in a plaza, watching people pass by. "But I miss home. I miss the children and the ranch." "So do I," Vincent admitted. "I never thought I would say this, but I cannot wait to get back to the noise and chaos of our life." They returned home to enthusiastic greetings from their children, who had made a welcome home banner and baked a slightly lopsided cake. The house felt complete again with everyone together, and Vincent realized that this was what happiness looked like, imperfect and loud and absolutely perfect. As James approached his 16th birthday, he began talking seriously about his future. He wanted to stay on the ranch, to learn everything Vincent could teach him about running the operation. Vincent was secretly thrilled, though he made sure James understood that he could choose any path he wanted. "This is what I want, Papa," James insisted. "The ranch is in my blood just like it is in yours. When I stand on the hills and look out over our land, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be." Abigail, listening to this conversation, caught Vincent's eye and smiled. Their son had inherited more than just his father's love of the land. He had inherited that sense of belonging, of purpose rooted in a particular place. Sarah, at 13, was already an accomplished artist. Abigail had taught her well, and several of Sarah's paintings had been displayed in local exhibitions. She talked about studying art in Dallas or Houston someday, and Abigail encouraged her dreams while also teaching her the discipline required to succeed as an artist. Michael, at 11, remained the family's gentle soul. He had a special connection with animals that amazed everyone who saw it. Wild creatures would come to him without fear, and horses that were skittish with others would calm under his touch. Vincent suspected Michael might become a veterinarian or a horse trainer, something that combined his love of animals with his gentle nature. In the fall of 1897, Abigail's work was featured in a major exhibition in Chicago, a significant honor that brought national attention to her paintings. Several prominent collectors purchased her work, and art critics praised her ability to capture the spirit of the American West. "You are famous now," Vincent said, reading the reviews that Mr. Pemberton had sent. "I am known in certain circles," Abigail corrected with a laugh. "That is not quite the same as famous. Besides, I am much more interested in being a good wife and mother than in being a famous artist." Yet Vincent knew she was proud of her accomplishments, and rightly so. She had managed to build a significant artistic career while also being fully present for her family. It was a balance few people achieved, and she had done it through talent, discipline, and the support of a husband who believed in her dreams. As the century drew to a close, Vincent and Abigail stood on the porch one New Year's Eve, watching fireworks that some of the ranch hands had set off in the distance. The children were still up, excited by the turn of the century and what 1900 might bring. "A new century," Abigail marveled. "Can you believe we will be living in the 1900s? "It seems impossible," Vincent agreed. "I remember when I was a boy, 1800 seemed like a year from ancient history. Now we are leaving it behind." "What do you think the new century will bring?" Abigail asked. Vincent pulled her close. "I do not know what it will bring for the world, but for us, I hope it brings more of what we have had. More love, more family, more good years together. I hope to see our children grown and happy. I hope to grow old beside you right here on this ranch." "That sounds perfect to me," Abigail said. As midnight approached, the whole family gathered on the porch. James, now 17 and already taller than his father, stood with his arm around his mother's shoulders. Sarah, 15 and beautiful, held Michael's hand. Aunt Helen and her husband were there too, along with several of the ranch hands who had become like family over the years. They counted down the final seconds of 1899 together, and as the clock struck midnight, cheers and laughter filled the air. Vincent kissed Abigail, and she kissed him back, surrounded by their family and the life they had built together. The new century brought changes, as all new times do. Technology advanced, bringing better farming equipment and eventually even electricity to some parts of Texas. The ranch modernized in small ways, though Vincent and Abigail were careful to preserve what made it special. James took on more responsibilities as he grew into manhood. At 21, he was effectively running half the ranch operations, freeing Vincent to spend more time with Abigail and their younger children. James had also begun courting a young woman named Emma from a neighboring ranch, and Vincent suspected an engagement was not far off. Sarah had spent a year studying art in Dallas and returned with refined skills and new techniques. She set up her own studio next to her mother's, and sometimes mother and daughter painted together, creating complementary works that galleries loved to display as a set. Michael, at 18, had indeed decided to become a veterinarian. He was studying with Doc Patterson in town, learning about animal medicine and care. Eventually, he planned to go to veterinary school, but for now, he was content learning through practical experience. Vincent, now in his mid-40s, felt the years in his body in ways he had not when he was younger. His back ached after long days in the saddle, and his hands sometimes stiffened in the cold. But he was healthy and strong, still capable of everything the ranch demanded. Abigail had matured into a woman of grace and quiet confidence. At 43, she was more beautiful to Vincent than she had been at 24. Her face showed the lines of a life well lived, and her eyes held the wisdom of hard-won experience. Her art had reached new levels of depth and meaning, informed by years of love and family and connection to the land. On a warm spring evening in 1905, James announced his engagement to Emma. The family celebrated with a special dinner, and Vincent felt a bittersweet mixture of joy and nostalgia. His eldest child was starting his own family, beginning the cycle anew. "You are going to be grandparents," Abigail whispered to Vincent that night as they lay in bed. "That makes us sound old," Vincent protested. "We are getting older," Abigail pointed out, "but I do not mind. Every year with you has been a gift." James and Emma married in June of that year, a beautiful ceremony followed by a reception at the ranch. The whole county seemed to attend, testament to the respect and affection people felt for the Dawson family. The young couple moved into a house Vincent had built for them on the eastern edge of the ranch, close enough to visit easily but far enough to give them privacy. True to Abigail's prediction, they became grandparents the following spring when Emma gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Vincent James, after both his grandfather and father. Vincent held his grandson for the first time with wonder, marveling at the continuation of the family line. "He has your eyes," Abigail said, looking at the baby. "He has his father's eyes," Vincent corrected. "But yes, they came from me originally." Little Vincent James was the first of several grandchildren. Over the next few years, James and Emma had 2 more children, a girl named Clara and another boy named Robert. Vincent and Abigail doted on their grandchildren, delighting in spoiling them in ways they had been too busy to spoil their own children. Sarah married at 26, later than many women but perfect for her. Her husband was an art dealer from Houston named Charles who appreciated her talent and supported her career. They divided their time between Houston and the ranch, and Sarah continued to produce beautiful work that earned acclaim and sold well. Michael finished his veterinary training and opened a practice in Llano, where he quickly became known as the best animal doctor in the county. He married at 24, choosing a sweet-natured girl named Grace who had grown up on a farm and loved animals as much as he did. As Vincent and Abigail entered their 50s, the ranch that had once been theirs alone had become a family compound. James and his family lived in the East House. Sarah and Charles stayed in the guest house when they visited. Michael and Grace had built a small place in town, but came out to the ranch nearly every Sunday for family dinner. The tradition of Sunday dinner had started organically and grown into something the whole family cherished. Everyone gathered at the main house, where Abigail and Aunt Helen prepared enormous meals. Children ran through the house and yard, adults talked and laughed, and Vincent presided over it all with quiet satisfaction. "This is what I dreamed of," he told Abigail one Sunday evening after everyone had gone home. "Not consciously maybe, but in my heart. A full house, children and grandchildren, love everywhere." "We are blessed," Abigail agreed, "more than we ever had a right to expect." They stood together on the porch as they had so many times over the years, watching the sun set over the ranch. Vincent's arm was around Abigail's shoulders, and her head rested against his chest. The land stretched out before them, familiar and beloved, the same land Abigail had sketched all those years ago when she first captured Vincent's heart. "You remember the title you gave that first painting of the ranch?" Vincent asked. "Home," Abigail said softly. "I called it home." "That is what this is," Vincent said. "Not just the land or the buildings, but all of it together. You and me, our children and grandchildren, the life we have built. Home is not a place. It is all of this, everything we have created together." Abigail turned to look up at him, her green eyes still as bright and intelligent as they had been 23 years ago. "I love you, Vincent Dawson. I have loved you since the day you brought me water and did not chase me off your land. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Vincent replied. "You took a lonely cowboy and gave him everything. A family, a purpose, joy beyond measure. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. Behind them, the ranch house glowed with lamplight, warm and welcoming. Around them, the Texas land stretched vast and timeless. Before them, whatever years remained held the promise of more love, more family, more moments like this one. The years continued to pass in a gentle rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Vincent and Abigail grew older together, their hair turning silver, their steps perhaps a bit slower, but their love never diminishing. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something so fundamental to their existence that they could hardly remember life before each other. Grandchildren continued to arrive. James and Emma had 6 children in total. Sarah and Charles had 3. Michael and Grace had 4. Vincent and Abigail's cup overflowed with blessings, and they treasured every moment with their growing family. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1912, their children threw them a surprise party at the ranch. Family came from across Texas, and even Thomas and his family made the journey. The ranch was full of people, noise, and laughter. As Vincent stood on the porch looking out at the celebration, at his children and grandchildren and friends, he felt Abigail slip her hand into his. "Quite a turnout," she said with a smile. "Quite a life," Vincent replied. "Thank you for saying yes all those years ago when I asked you to marry me after knowing you only a few weeks. How could I have said anything else? You offered me everything I had been looking for without even knowing it. Love, partnership, a home, the freedom to be myself. You gave me all of that and more." They danced that evening, moving slowly to music played by a small band that Sarah had hired. Vincent held Abigail close, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender soap, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. "I would do it all again," he murmured. "Every single moment exactly the same." "So would I," Abigail whispered back, "though maybe we could skip the part where I was trespassing on your land." Vincent laughed. "No, we keep that part. That was the beginning of everything." As they aged into their 60s and then their 70s, Vincent and Abigail gradually stepped back from active management of the ranch. James had taken over years earlier, and he ran it with the same dedication and love that Vincent had. The ranch continued to prosper under James's leadership, and Vincent felt pride in knowing his legacy would continue through his son. Abigail painted less frequently, her hands sometimes stiff with arthritis, but when she did paint, her work had a wisdom and serenity that could only come from a life fully lived. Her paintings sold for significant sums now, sought after by collectors who recognized her as one of the great Western artists of her generation. They spent their days quietly, taking slow walks around the ranch, sitting on the porch watching their grandchildren play, hosting family dinners that had grown so large they had to be held outside under the trees. They read to each other in the evenings, talked about everything and nothing, and simply enjoyed being together. On a cool morning in October of 1920, Vincent woke to find Abigail still sleeping beside him, her breathing slow and peaceful. He lay watching her, this woman who had transformed his life so completely. She was 78 now and he was 72, and they had been married for 38 years. As if sensing his gaze, Abigail's eyes opened. She smiled at him, that same warm smile that had captured his heart nearly 4 decades ago. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning, my love." They rose slowly, helping each other with the small indignities of age, and made their way to the kitchen. Through the window, they could see the ranch awakening, James already at work, grandchildren beginning to appear from various directions. "What shall we do today?" Abigail asked as they sat with their coffee. "Anything you want," Vincent replied, "though perhaps we could walk down to the creek." It has been a while since we visited your old sketching spot. I would like that." After breakfast, they walked slowly to the creek, their hands clasped together. The oak tree still stood where it always had, older and more gnarled but still strong. They sat on the ground beneath it, not caring about the dirt on their clothes. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Abigail asked. "Of course. You had just sketched my ranch, captured something about it that I had never been able to see. I brought you water and we talked. I think I started falling in love with you that very day, though I did not realize it yet." "I felt it too," Abigail confessed. "Something shifted inside me when I saw you walking toward me, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, even though I had been trespassing on your land." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the creek burble past, feeling the Texas sun warm on their faces. Around them, the ranch hummed with activity, but here under the oak tree they existed in a pocket of peace. "We have had a good life," Vincent said eventually. "The best life," Abigail agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible. You know, when I first came to Texas, I thought I was running away from grief and loneliness. But I was actually running toward everything I had ever wanted. Toward you, toward home, toward love." "I am glad you were a trespasser," Vincent said with a smile. Abigail laughed, the sound still bright despite her years. "So am I." They sat under the oak tree until the sun was high in the sky, talking about their life together, about their children and grandchildren, about the ranch and the future. When they finally made their way back to the house, they found it full of family who had come for Sunday dinner. The house rang with noise and laughter, with the sounds of children playing and adults talking. Vincent and Abigail moved through the rooms, greeting everyone, accepting hugs and kisses, soaking in the love that surrounded them. That evening, after everyone had gone home, they sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. The sun was setting in a spectacular display of orange and purple, painting the ranch in golden light. "This is my favorite time of day," Abigail said. "Sitting here with you, watching the sun set." "Mine too," Vincent agreed, "though every moment with you is my favorite, really." Abigail leaned her head on his shoulder. "Promise me something, anything. Promise me that when one of us is gone, the other will remember this, all of this. The love, the life we built, the family we created. Promise me you will remember that we had everything that mattered." Vincent felt tears prick his eyes. "I promise, though I hope we have many more years together yet." "So do I," Abigail said. "But whenever it comes, whether tomorrow or 10 years from now, we will have had more than most people get in 3 lifetimes. We will have had true love, Vincent, the kind that changes everything." They sat together until the stars came out, until the Texas night wrapped around them like a blanket. Inside the house, lamps glowed warmly. Around them, the ranch settled into evening quiet. Above them, the vast sky held more stars than anyone could count. Vincent thought about that day long ago when he had found a copper-haired woman sketching his ranch, capturing not just the landscape but something deeper, something essential. He thought about how his lonely life had transformed the moment she entered it, how love had turned everything ordinary into something magical. Abigail had captured more than just the landscape in her sketches and paintings all those years ago. She had captured possibility, hope, and the promise of something better. She had seen the beauty in a lonely cowboy and his isolated ranch, and in seeing it, she had made it real. They had built a life together on this Texas land, raised a family, created a legacy of love that would continue through their children and grandchildren, and all the generations yet to come. They had faced challenges and overcome them, supported each other through loss and celebrated together in joy. As they finally rose to go inside, Vincent took one last look at the ranch spread out before them. This land had been his heritage, his burden, his pride. But Abigail had made it more than that. She had made it a home filled with love and laughter, a place where family gathered and memories were made. "Thank you," he said to her as they stood in the doorway. "For what?" Abigail asked. "For trespassing on my land all those years ago. For seeing something in me worth capturing. For saying yes when I asked you to marry me. For giving me a life beyond my wildest dreams. For everything." Abigail smiled and pulled him close, kissing him with all the love of nearly 4 decades together. "Thank you for letting me stay." They went inside together, closing the door on another perfect day, secure in the knowledge that whatever time they had left would be spent exactly as they wanted. Together, surrounded by love, living the life they had built one day at a time. The ranch would continue. The land would endure. But the greatest legacy Vincent and Abigail left was not measured in acres or herds, or even in the paintings that hung in galleries across the country. Their greatest legacy was the love they had shared, the family they had raised, and the proof that 2 lonely souls could find each other against all odds and create something beautiful that would last long after they were gone. And every evening, as the sun set over the Texas hills, that legacy shone as bright as the golden light that painted the land, a testament to the power of love and the beauty of a life well lived together.